Okay, so I originally planned on having a much more elaborate opening for this video, but then Christmas happened, family came over, some interesting family stuff happened that obviously I can't share because it's personal, but it basically meant I couldn't get around to doing the intro for this video that I planned, and I really wanted to get it out for you guys, so this is what you get. Before we get going though, I do think it's only fitting that I give a shout out to, or honorable mention to, 3 games in particular, those being Owlboy, Inside, and Oxenfree. Now, they're all games that I'm sure probably would have cracked my top 10 list had I actually gotten around to playing them this year, but because of time, I didn't. There's actually a lot of stuff I didn't get around to playing this year that I wanted to. It's been a pretty busy year for me. Some of you might have noticed I disappeared for about 3 or 4 months in the middle of the year, completely. It's a pretty long story, but the short version is I had some medical stuff that basically my doctors wanted me to take it easy. But I'm back now. I'm good. So unfortunately, none of those 3 games will be making it onto the list. I do think they would have had I gotten around to playing them, but no, they are with me in spirit or something. I don't know. They would have been on the list. They all look amazing. I actually did play about a few minutes of Oxenfree, but not enough to really have any sort of opinion on it. But hey, there you go. So this is what I did play. And before we get started on the actual top 10, I do have a list of honorable mentions because there was a ton of stuff I played this year that wasn't able to make it onto the list, but I did want to mention it just because it wasn't for the most part, it wasn't big, high-profile stuff, but stuff I really enjoyed, thought was interesting and unique, and I wanted to tell you about, tell you I enjoy it, what I thought of it, and maybe some of you out there will, as I've learned from my other stuff, despite them not being extremely popular, some people will see my stuff and go out and check them out. So these are recommendations that didn't make the top 10 list, but stuff I would say at least look into. And they are as follows. Pokemon Sun and Moon. My first real Pokemon experience, I have to say I was thoroughly impressed. The art direction was creative, the Pokemon were adorable, and the writing had a sort of Saturday morning cartoon charm to the whole thing. But I found the combat incredibly underwhelming, if not outright frustrating, and there wasn't a lot else to it besides the basic formula. God Eater 2, an incredibly fun single-player Monster Hunter-style game with cool combat, lots of customization, and a large cast of fun and likable characters. However, it was ultimately let down by some really terrible narrative pacing and repetitive mission design. Dragon Quest Builders, a more guided Minecraft-type game, Builders managed to steal hours of my time with its combination of building mechanics and JRPG charm, but consequently felt a lot more restrictive than Minecraft, and by resetting your progress after every chapter, it can feel a bit meaningless at times. Bravely Second Endlayer. Essentially an entire game war of all the best elements of Bravely Default, minus the excruciating final act, and even featuring a few key improvements like chaining together multiple battles. Although mechanical and aesthetic marvel, it only has passable writing, especially as the novelty of a true Final Fantasy spiritual successor is kind of worn off at this point. Atelier Sophie, Alchemy of the Mysterious Book. The only annualized series that seems to still consistently put out quality games, Atelier Sophie is the best elements of the series combined. The alchemy crafting is a lot of fun, the way it utilizes time management is really addicting, and the writing and characters have a very endearing sense of charm and simplicity to the whole thing. But that said, the combat isn't too remarkable, and especially for a JRPG, there isn't a significant amount of depth or writing to the mechanics. Except for the alchemy crafting. That was rad. Tokyo Mirage Sessions. An unabashed love letter to Japanese pop culture, it's hard not to admire TMS for everything it does and does well. From its style to its music to its fantastic battle system. But again, the writing was pretty bland and the characters for the most part were much better. Azure Striker Gunvolt 2. Best of the 3 Mega Man clones to come out this year, ASG2 had some beautiful sprite artwork, responsive controls, and fluid and challenging gameplay. However, I didn't get far enough into it to really decide whether or not it deserved to be a contender for Best of the Year. Star Wars Knights of the Eternal Throne. Everyone talks about how great of an expansion The Witcher 3 Blood and Wine was, and it was, but no one seems to be willing to acknowledge what exactly BioWare's recent expansions for the Old Republic have done. The story and characters of Knights of the Fallen Empire and Knights of the Eternal Throne are worthy of commendation alone, but the changes made to the combat and mission design, especially several new boss fight mechanics, thoroughly impressed me. As a rule, I don't put remasters or expansions on my best or worst of the year list, but right now, especially since you can just start off with a new storyline, my recommendation for the Old Republic could not be stronger. Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. The best free-to-play mobile game I've ever played, and the game that comes closest to being on the top 10 list. Brave Exvius is all the best elements of a classical 16-bit Final Fantasy game. with its fast and fluid combat, stellar music and sprite artwork, and an actually pretty compelling plot and characters. Well, for a free-to-play game, anyway. As much as I adore it, though, it is too similar to several other games on this list, and I felt those deserve the recognition more. But still, I strongly recommend Brave Exvius to anyone. It's free on Android and iOS, so get on that. And with all that done, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you my top 10 best games of 2016. While I'm not that familiar with this series' previous entries myself, I can certainly say that 2016's reboot of Ratchet & Clank has made me realize just how much I miss the golden age of cartoony 3D platformers. I know plenty of people would prefer to call this an action-adventure, but even disregarding the vague and obtuse name that so-called genre has, this was far closer to a Rayman 3 than any sort of Uncharted or Tomb Raider. Not that it really matters what you call it, since it's a darn fine game regardless. It had great platforming and a welcome challenge, all kept lively and entertaining by a fun cast of characters and clever dialogue, the likes of which we are thankfully starting to see more of now. Now, I wasn't particularly impressed with its attempts at storytelling, with things feeling awkwardly paced and underdeveloped. Explains why people hated the movie so much. But this is one instance where I can forgive that. Sometimes you just need a fun, goofy platforming adventure, and that's exactly what Ratchet & Clank is. For Naga's sake, guys, are we still not over the hate out of 10 delusion period yet? I like this game. I like it a lot. So what if it's not as impressive as Awakening? Did anyone really think it was gonna be? What exactly is it you people want from me? My blood? Anyway, Fire Emblem Fates. It's pretty great. If you want more, you can just go watch my review, but short version, it's basically Awakening again with lesser story but better gameplay. And though the 3 campaigns are a bit pricey and do make things feel stretched out, it is still nice seeing the story from multiple perspectives, and it's more Fire Emblem, so who can complain with that? Thing is, Awakening was so great already that it's not like they needed to fix anything that wasn't broke in the first place. It's still Fire Emblem, and it's still rad enough to earn a spot on the Best of the Year list. Now will you leave me alone about it? Heck, I am so glad I was able to put this one on. RFL came out of nowhere early this year and stunned me by how excellent it was. One of the few retro RPGs that manages to capture the charm of yesteryear as well as adopt certain modernized elements. RFL follows in the tradition of the best retro RPGs of the past few years, like Radiant Historia and Bravely Default, without feeling needlessly bloated to give it a falsified sense of scale. At only an average playtime of about 10 hours and a price to match, there really is no reason not for any lover of classical RPGs to give this game a shot at the very least. It may not be 2016's best RPG, but it still remains a darn fine piece of game making nonetheless. Despite it being the only really notable first-person shooter this year to not feature a much-coveted single-player campaign, Overwatch was packed full of so much character, charming creativity, and exciting gameplay that annihilates its competition's multiplayer that it really didn't matter. With a plethora of creative and colorful characters with a surprising amount of backstory despite the fact there being no single-player campaign, and engaging and fluid gameplay that requires teamwork for any sort of effective chance at victory, there really wasn't any cooperative experience that could stand up to it this year. The fact that it was able to excel on its multiplayer alone should be a testament to how excellent the final package was, and how deserving it is of its place on the list. Oh hey, it's that game that everyone was fondly praising for being a spiritual successor to Harvest Moon. I thought we already got that already, but whatever. Stardew Valley, like a lot of the games this year, came right the flying fart out of no one's where. For about a month, this game was freaking huge. And deservedly so, since it was a pretty sweet farming simulator in the vein of Harvest Moon. And the formula of managing your time and energy each day to grow crops and upgrade your farm, while trying to maintain relationships with the townsfolk, was just as engaging here as it was in that series. Add onto that some gorgeous pixel artwork and you got yourself a wonderful little package. If you like old school Harvest Moon or farming simulators in general, then you probably already tried this out, so who am I kidding? So, Eric Barron, can we get a Rune Factory clone next time? I'd be happy to kickstart that, my dude. Overwatch may have stolen the award for Best Multiplayer of the Year, but the single-player campaign of Doom was so literally bloody amazing, it simply has to rank higher. Packed with so much style that it completely redefines the rule of cool, this kind of quality from a first-person shooter campaign hasn't really been seen since the PS2 era. I think like Jedi Outcast was the last time I had this much fun with an FPS. It's a game that no one thought would be good, and exactly 100% of those same people absolutely adored. A celebration as much as an amalgamation of all the best elements of the golden era of first-person shooters, and an example of how to do a reboot right, Doom has shown once again for all that there is no excuse for all the lazy, content-devoid, dumbed-down shooters that have been saturating the market for the past many years. It really is a diamond needle among the haystack of crap. Many were initially worried about Uncharted 4's release, after news of writer and director Amy Hennig's departure from Naughty Dog to go work at some tiny artsy-fartsy sci-fi game called Star Wars or something. However, it turns out that their fears were all for naught, as the fourth installment in the Uncharted series turned out to arguably be the best one. While outside of the set pieces, the gameplay wasn't actually anything really noteworthy, and really drew things out for far too long. The writing, themes, and characterization were so far above almost anything else that came out this year in terms of emotional payoff, that to not include it on some kind of best of the year list would feel like a travesty to everything I wish to come out of a game experience. Uncharted 4 wraps up the stories of Nathan, Elena, and Sully so perfectly that if we never did see another Uncharted game again, I would be utterly thrilled at the artistic integrity that Naughty Dog has managed to maintain. I struggled quite a bit as to whether or not to place Final Fantasy XV above the far more beloved Uncharted 4, but in the end I felt it just needed to be done. While nowhere near as well written of a story, Final Fantasy XV is not only a better game with its combat and mechanical depth, not to mention the likable characters, loads of humor, and a fantastically beautiful ending, it managed to deliver on a 10-year promise that so many feared would either be completely broken if it ever saw the light of day at all. Even with a bunch of notable problems with its writing and side quests, Final Fantasy XV managed to do something that no other game with a long troubled development like this, and even the last 10 years of single-player Final Fantasy, it managed to create a game that was really darn great. If it had the Cactuar Conductor, it would have been Game of the Year. Honestly, the less I say about Pony Island, the better, as its simplicity and unpredictability is one of the best things about it, and it's right on par with the last year's critical darling Undertale. It's one of the few art games I've played recently that's worthy of wearing that label as a well-earned achievement rather than a mark of pretentious condensation. It manages to deliver such a small package so perfectly that it's only fair it gets the highest recommendation it deserves. Even though this slot is primarily for Trails of Cold Steel 2, I'm also giving the first game a shout out as well. Not only is it essential playing to enjoy or even understand the phenomenal sequel, but it was released less than a week from the end of 2015, so it's not really possible for any sane person to have finished it in a reasonable amount of time. And it and its sequel are both frankly so utterly fantastic that they both deserve their time in the spotlight. If Pony Island is the perfect slice of cheesecake, then Trails of Cold Steel 2 is a 5-star, 3-course gourmet meal. Not since Persona 4 has any RPG, or nearly any game for that matter, managed to blend every essential element of its concept together so brilliantly that I struggle to find anything notable that holds it back even the slightest bit. The characters are some of the best I've seen since Hiromu Arakawa's works. The world is deep and lore-filled enough to impress even Tolkien, and the gameplay and mechanics put virtually every other modern turn-based RPG to shame, as does its outstanding localization and voice acting from Xseed. And the music could not be more perfectly fitting to the tone while remaining utterly memorable if it tried. When the only thing
that approach is a notable flaw is that the game had a rather generic shonen anime art style. It really should be a testament to how brilliant the experience overall is. If they had the likes of Yoshitaka Amano or Kunihiko Fujisaka doing the artwork, I honestly believe these two games would have been given far more of the attention and love they deserve. Even so, Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 2 are more than worthy to take their place alongside the likes of Chrono Trigger, Xenoblade Chronicles, Persona 4, Suikoden 2, and Final Fantasy VI as some of the most borderline perfect RPGs and video games that I've ever played. And it is by far, by leaps and bounds, the best game of 2016.
And there you have it. Unsurprising to anyone who actually watched my videos this year, Trails of Cold Steel 2 was right at the top. Only game I gave both a 10 out of 10 and a best of the best score to this whole year. Well, except for the original Trails of Cold Steel. Which even then I would say now, with my updated rating system, I'd probably give it a buy at retail price, but whatever. I'm not making any promises, but I do have plans for a top 10 worst games of the year. The problem is, although it's all written out, I haven't recorded anything of it, which means I haven't edited and I haven't gotten the footage or anything like that. So it'd be a lot more work to do. It would take it wouldn't be out for, oh man, a few weeks, maybe a month. Even though it's actually not that hard of a video to make, it's just a matter of finding the time, because I've got classes starting up in, like, 2 weeks? Something like that? I don't know. But we'll see. If not, I do have a lot of videos I want to do. I'm not going to make any promises for reviews, because it's basically... How I do reviews is basically whenever I play a game and I have something I want to say about it, I will do a video on it. I may start doing something that's like a really short 1-minute reviews. That was not intended to be a Pro Jared reference, but I guess it turned into one. But that same idea where it's I take something I don't have a lot to say on it, but I just want to get my thoughts out there. So because there were even games that were not in my honorable mentions list that I would have liked to have said, hey, I played this year. Maybe it wasn't even a game that came out this year, but I played it this year and I enjoyed it, and maybe you'll like it too. But there you have it. That's the list. Maybe I'm not going to promise a top 10 worst list, but I would certainly like to do it. If not, then I think my next video game that's queued up for review is Fate Extilio the Umbra Star. Big fan of the Fate series, but honestly I'm not sure how to feel about that one. We'll see. The Final Fantasy 15 review will be coming when they've actually released all the story DLC. I don't feel like it was fair for me to give a entire review until I had actually played that, so I could compare the before and after version. I may end up just waiting till after Final Fantasy 12 comes out and do it with it when I review all the others. I don't know. We'll see. Regardless, I thank everyone who's watched me over the past year. If you like this video, please click that thumbs up button and subscribe while you're at it. My name, as always, is Caius. Have a wonderful rest of the day wherever you are, and a happy New Year, of course. And I will see you all next time.